Okay, Aaron has been chomping at the bit, to use the cliche, on this one most of yesterday and certainly all of today. So what you got down there, kid?
The governor's chief of staff, Mark Cooper, was on the air with us yesterday and talked about how the governor. I'm going to play you the cut. I'm going to let you listen to him. I know you probably heard him yesterday. He talked about the governor's involvement in the pick of the Speaker of the House.
All right.
You got my computer on over there, Rube? Okay, you got to turn that on.
He was not actively engaged in the selection of the speaker, but certainly, we like what we're hearing from Speaker Schexnayder with the people he's talking about bringing on his team. And, he's a very conservative Republican, so it was really kind of humorous to see some of the things that were being said about him. He was not handpicked. He was not involved in selecting who that was going to be. That came, actually from the Republicans.
Okay. The governor was not involved.
That steam coming out your ears there, Alan?
Well, I'm used to this administration skirting the truth, outright lying, making things up, whatever word you want to use for it. That is, to quote General Norman Schwarzkopf, bovine scatology. That's just not true.
How do you know that? How do you know it's not true?
Well, I'll tell you, I've got several examples. We had 10 Democrats were prepared to support us, which put our number in the 60 range.
Even Cedric Glover. Cedric Glover even tweeted he was proud to support Sherman Mack.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
And Patrick Jefferson from Union Parish had both, and we had 8 others that were on board. In fact, the mayor of New Orleans even called and said, I've talked to 4 New Orleans Democrats, and they're on board with Sherman Mack because we'd made a deal to support Patrick Jefferson for Speaker Pro Tem. Then the mayor called back and said, sorry, the governor called and told me to not get involved. And then there was a meeting of Democrats, and several members of the governor's staff and his administration called. In fact, they went on a massive offensive Friday and Saturday, calling all of the Democrats, telling them to not vote for Sherman Mack. Interestingly, I did not get the message that they were telling people to vote for Clay Schexnayder, which led us to believe maybe they were going to try to swap candidates on us, which they didn't do. But the message that we got from multiple Democrats is, I know I told you I'd be with you, but the governor called and I can't. So to say the governor was not actively involved, maybe he didn't personally make many calls, but his staff sure did, and they were doing it in his name. And the mayor said the governor called. She didn't say one of his staff members called, his chief of staff called. She said the governor called. And so, yeah, he was actively involved. And look, let's be honest. You don't get 100% of the Democrats to vote for one candidate without the governor keeping them on board. And with even 3 or 4 Democrats, we had the 53 votes to tip the scale. And we've had 3 Republican speakers prior to this one, and they've all had Democrat Speaker Pro Tem. That's something that's always been done. We try to, if we have a Republican chair, we try to have a Democrat vice chair on a committee. And we've had a Republican speaker, Democrat Speaker Pro Tem. That's been the formula since the Republicans gained the majority in the legislature. That's been the formula. We were simply playing by the formula that previous administration, previous speakers had used. And it seemed to work. And we were there and the numbers worked until the governor stepped in. There's one reason and one reason only that Clay Schexnayder is speaker now, and that is the governor stepped in and blocked Sherman Mack, and that's end of story. Now, part of what he said about Clay being fairly conservative, that's true. If you look at the voting records of Clay Schexnayder and Sherman Mack, they're probably very comparable. I'm not sitting here telling you Sherman is much more conservative than Clay is. The difference between the two was who was supporting them. Mm-hmm. All of the people that you would consider conservatives in the House were backing Sherman Mack. All of the people that you would consider liberals or rhinos or of the Republican side were on the Clay Schexnayder team. And that's just a fact.
This looks, Alan, like the Republicans are fighting with each other again. Here y'all go. Y'all can't agree. And now we're in for 4 years of more of this CRA you-know-what.
Yeah, and that's absolutely true. What essentially happened, if you go back and look at 2018 when we were fighting the tax increases, we had 25 core Republican conservatives that were helping fight the tax increases. Well, that number has now increased to 45 because we had 45 Republicans, 2/3 of the elected Republicans in the legislature voted for the Sherman Mack, who was endorsed by the Republican delegation and supported by the conservatives. So our conservative membership has increased from 25 to 45. So I feel really good about where we are going forward. The fact of the matter is, some of the freshmen, some of the newer representatives looked at it and said, I like Clay more than I like Sherman. And that's perfectly legitimate. That's fine. These are new people. They don't really understand the ramifications or the personalities of the people backing them. But the real question is, when the candidate or when the speaker goes to meet with the governor, who is he going to bring with him? And in Sherman Mack's case, the people that he brought with him would have been the conservatives in the House, the ones who had been fighting the expansion of government, the ones who have been opposing tax increases, the ones who have been pushing tort reform and trying to lower your auto insurance rates. That's who Sherman Mack was going to bring with him when he met with the governor. On the other side, Clay Schexnayder, the people he's going to bring, presumably, are either Democrats or the Republicans who carried the governor's tax bills. I mean, the difference between the two candidates is not that significant if you look at their voting record. But if you look at who is supporting them and where their support came from, and the real question that we have is, what did he promise the Democrats?
I was going to ask you that. I was going to ask you, were promises made not only to the Democrats but to those Republicans who went the other way?
But yeah, I don't know what promises were made to the Republicans, but what we're hearing is obviously those rhinos, or the ones who carry the governor's tax bills, are now going to be in control of the Ways and Means Committee, which controls taxes. The governor's hand-picked guy is going to put the chairman of appropriations, which means they're going to rubber stamp the governor's budget. We're going to have no more budget reform, or at least we're going to have to fight it on the floor, because that's where our votes are going to be. So, the question is, what did he promise? I think we know what he promised to the Republicans. The question is, what did he promise to the Democrats? We had some people that were in the Democrat meetings Sunday night say that he had promised them chairman and vice chairman of House and Governmental Affairs, which is the committee that controls redistricting. And he promised equal representation of Democrats on the committee. We have been told by his team that is fundamentally not true. But we had a couple of people that were in the room tell us that it was true. So somebody's lying. We heard that he promised them 5 committee chairmen, 7 vice chairmen, and a plethora of other things, and some fairly important committees. Again, his team came out Monday morning and said, no, that is not true. All I can tell you is why don't you call some local Democrats who were in the room and ask them, because they're the ones that came out and told us. They said, look, this is what he's promising, and that's too good of a deal, and the Democrats are going to go with him.
I think, pardon me, I think I just heard you say that in this upcoming session that the Democrats are going to be, despite the fact that they are the minority by far, that Democrats will be in charge, doing the bidding of the governor, in charge of redistricting. Did I hear that right?
Let me back up. Well, no. The redistricting, first of all, it's going to be in 2021, not 2020. What I said is we were told that was one of the things that Representative Schexnayder promised the Democrats in exchange for their support. Now, he and his core Republican team deny that. But some of the Democrats that were in that meeting say that was one of the promises that was made. So we'll see what happens when the committee assignments come out.
So what's going to happen?
When are those going to be made? When are we going to hear those?
Sometime in the next 3 to 4 weeks.
What do you think this means?
The session starts March 9.
What do you think this means for tort reform?
Well, I'll give you a good example. In the Republican delegation meeting, when we were interviewing the candidates, Sherman Mack he said, I'm not 100% committed. I'm 1,000% committed. I will carry the bill, and if it gets vetoed, I'll carry it again until it passes. Clay Schexnayder said, we'll certainly look at it, and if it's necessary or if it's required to lower insurance rates, we'll certainly look at it. There was no firm commitment from Schexnayder's side, and all of the people that you would consider trial lawyers in the legislature were on the Schexnayder side. Obviously, the governor and his team don't want tort reform or auto insurance reform. So I would think that it's going to have tough sledding in the in the House. The irony is the House and Senate seem to have changed roles from last year. The Senate seems to have conservative chairman and a conservative Senate president, and seem to be the ones that are going to be the conservative backstop in the legislature, while the House has now got a John Alario type, we think, speaker who's going to do the governor's bidding for him from the speaker chair. We think. We don't know. Nobody really knows what Speaker Schexnayder is going to do. We're optimistic, but optimism is all we have at this point.
Alan,
we'll just have to see.
In the Republicans that backed Schexnayder, in that speaker voting? Is there a common thread among them in their voting record that
Yes.
you could go ahead?
Yes, they all voted for tax increases. They all support the governor when he asked them to. They're the ones who meet with the governor on a fairly regular basis, and they're the governor's arm. And I mean, if you look at who's his core team, he was nominated by Representative Stuart Bishop, who carried the governor's tax bill in one of the special sessions in 2018. Stephen Dwight carried the tax bill in the other special. If you look, Paula Davis carried the one that ultimately passed. These are all the people who voted for Schexnayder, who supported his candidacy pretty much from the beginning. So the common thread is they voted for tax increases, and they're the ones who do the governor's bidding on his various projects and things that he asked for on the Republican side. Representative Tanner McGee is the Speaker pro tem. Tanner's a good guy, but he carried a lot of the criminal justice reform package and the let criminals out of jail early, give them welfare and food stamps immediately on release, and felons voting. All of these people that supported Schexnayder are the ones who voted to pass the bill to give felons the right to vote. And so, is there a common thread? Yes, they support the governor. They supported the governor in the last term, and I presume they're going to support him in the next term.